Diana!
The first time I noticed something wrong was during inventory week. Costco after hours is different. Vast concrete floors and towering steel shelves bathed in half-light. The same fluorescence that blasts shoppers during business hours dim to an industrial twilight. Our night crew was short-staffed, as usual, leaving me to handle the freezer section alone. Just before 2 a.m., I was scanning pallets of frozen chicken when I noticed a customer wandering the aisles. Except we'd been closed for hours. And the doors were locked. "Excuse me," I called out, my voice echoing strangely in the cavernous space. "The store is closed." The figure, a man in a dark jacket with his back to me, paused briefly but didn't turn around. Then he continued walking, disappearing behind the wall of toilet paper that had become a permanent fixture since the pandemic. I radioed security. "Gary, we've got someone on the floor. East side, heading toward household goods." Static answered me. I tried again. Nothing. Against protocol, I followed. The temperature seemed to drop with each step I took, though maybe that was just a lingering chill from the freezers. I rounded the toilet paper mountain, expecting to confront our trespasser. Empty. I checked every aisle in that section systematically, then circled back to my station. Exhaustion plays tricks on the mind during night shifts, everyone knows that. I convinced myself I'd seen another employee from a distance, and returned to my inventory. On break, I mentioned it to Tricia, who'd worked nights at Costco for 11 years. "Which aisle?" she asked, not looking up from her phone. "Household. By the toilet paper." She nodded slightly. "You're in Miguel's section now." "Miguel? I haven't met him." "You wouldn't have. He was before your time." "Night stalker who?" She hesitated. "He had an accident. Pallet jack carrying paper goods. Crushed him against the wall. They found him the next morning." I felt a cold spike of adrenaline. "You're screwing with me." She shrugged, eyes still fixed on her screen. "Welcome to nights." I laughed it off. Every workplace has its ghost stories, especially places like this, where weird things happening at 3 a.m. can usually be explained by sleep deprivation. But then I started noticing other things. Items I'd carefully stacked would be rearranged when I returned from bathroom breaks. The massive steel door to the walk-in freezer would be cracked open even though I distinctly remembered shutting it. The motion-activated lights in rarely used corners of the warehouse would flicker to life when no one was there. Then the recording started. 3 weeks into my night shift rotation, I was reviewing inventory footage with my manager, Dan. We needed to track a discrepancy in the pet food section. As we watched employees moving through the frame, Dan suddenly paused the video. "Who scheduled Evans for that night?" he asked, pointing at a figure partially visible at the edge of the frame. I leaned closer, squinting at the grainy security footage. "That's not Evans. That's—" I trailed off, realizing I didn't recognize the person. Dan's face tightened. "That's nobody. Nobody should be in that section at 3:17 a.m. He rewound the footage, played it again. The figure moved differently than the other employees, more deliberate, with an unusual gait. And while the footage was too blurry to make out features, something about the proportions seemed wrong, like the head was slightly too large for the body. "Equipment malfunction," Dan muttered, closing the laptop abruptly. "Happens all the time with the older cameras." But I'd been working inventory long enough to know what video artifacts look like. This wasn't that. I requested access to the security archives, citing training purposes. Most of what I found was mundane: employees stocking, cleaning, the occasional customer trying doors after hours. But in footage from quiet periods, between 2 and 4 a.m., I found more anomalies. Shadows moving against the flow of traffic. Indistinct figures standing motionless in dimly lit corners. And twice, the same dark-jacketed man I'd seen, always shot from behind, always in different sections. Coworkers brushed off my concerns. Night brain, they called it, that foggy state where reality gets soft around the edges. Only Tricia seemed to understand in her way. "Every big store has its quirks," she told me during a cigarette break in the loading bay. "Think about it. All these products, all this space, and so few people to watch it all. Things happen. What kind of things? I pressed. She exhaled a plume of smoke. You work here long enough, the place starts to feel alive. Like it's watching you back. The next night, I found a cell phone tucked between boxes of frozen vegetables. Not unusual. Customers left things behind all the time. But when I turned it into lost and found, curiosity made me check if it was locked. It wasn't. The home screen showed dozens of photos, all taken inside our Costco. Night shots. Empty aisles photographed from odd angles. Close-ups of security cameras. And most disturbing, photos of employees working, all taken from a distance, many through the gaps in shelving. The most recent folder contained photos of me. Me counting inventory. Me on my phone during break. Me walking to my car after shift. The timestamps showed they'd been taken over several weeks. Some during hours when I was alone in my section. I reported it immediately. Management reviewed the security footage, but the cameras hadn't caught anyone following me or taking photos. They increased security patrols and reminded everyone to stay vigilant, but without a suspect, there wasn't much else they could do. I began noticing small discrepancies in my section. Items moved slightly from where I'd placed them, as if someone had picked them up and put them back. One night, I found my water bottle had been moved from my cart to a shelf 20 feet away. Another time, my scanner was relocated to the opposite end of the aisle while I briefly stepped away. Someone's messing with you, Tricia said when I mentioned it. Probably Evans. He's got a weird sense of humor. But Evans had been transferred to the morning shift weeks ago. Then the notes started appearing. The first one was tucked into my jacket pocket while it hung in the break room. A receipt with neat handwriting on the back. I see you noticing. That's good. Most don't. I threw it away, convinced it was a prank. The second appeared 2 nights later, slipped beneath my scanner. The cameras don't see everything. But I do. The third was left on my windshield, protected from the rain by my wiper blade. Don't you wonder what happens in the hours between closing and opening? The in-between time that belongs to either day? I requested a transfer to day's shift. My manager seemed unsurprised. Night work isn't for everyone, he said, not meeting my eyes. We can probably move you in a few weeks. That wasn't soon enough, but I needed the job. I installed a dashcam in my car and bought a small body camera that I wore clipped to my vest. When coworkers asked about it, I lied and said I was documenting processes for training purposes. The footage revealed nothing unusual at first, just hours of me working, taking breaks, moving through the store. But reviewing the video from my 4th night, I noticed something in the background of a shot. In the reflection of a freezer door, while I was scanning items with my back turned, the dark-jacketed figure stood watching me from the end of the aisle. Even in the distorted reflection, I could see now what had been bothering me about the proportions. The jacket hung oddly, as if the body inside was somehow wrong. The body camera hadn't picked up any sound of footsteps approaching or retreating. One moment the reflection was empty, the next it wasn't, and then it was empty again. I nearly quit that night. The only thing that stopped me was financial desperation and the fact that my transfer had been approved, just 3 more night shifts to go. On my penultimate night, I arrived to find the crew unusually quiet. A pallet had collapsed in the back storage area, sending heavy appliance boxes cascading down. No one was hurt, but everyone was on edge. Just like Miguel, I heard someone whisper. I cornered Tricia during break. Tell me what really happened to Miguel. She looked tired. Why do you care? You're leaving. Because I need to know if I'm losing my mind. She stubbed out her cigarette. Miguel was working alone one night. Security footage shows him stacking paper goods, then looking up suddenly like he heard something. He walks off camera toward the back storage area. 2 hours later, a pallet of appliances falls on him. Crushed his chest. He wasn't found until morning crew arrived. That doesn't make sense. Why would a secured pallet just fall? It wouldn't, she said. Unless someone destabilized it. You're saying someone killed him? Why wasn't there an investigation? There was. Inconclusive. No evidence of anyone else being involved. She lit another cigarette with shaking hands. But the week before it happened, Miguel started talking about seeing someone in the store after hours. Someone who shouldn't be there. Management thought he was stealing or using drugs on shift. My skin went cold. Did he ever describe this person? Just said they wore a dark jacket and never showed their face. I almost didn't go in for my final night. But some stubborn part of me needed answers. Or maybe proof that I wasn't hallucinating. The warehouse felt different that night, tense, like the air before a storm. I set up my body camera and positioned my phone to record my section while I worked. 2 hours into the shift, the lights in the far corner began flickering. I radioed maintenance, but no one responded. Around 3 a.m., I was alone in the freezer section when my radio crackled to life. Help, storage! The voice was distorted, barely audible through the static. I tried to respond, but the radio went dead. Protocol dictated calling security for any emergency, but something compelled me to investigate first. I grabbed my scanner as a makeshift weapon and headed toward the back storage area. The motion sensor lights activated as I entered the massive room, illuminating towers of pallets stacked nearly to the ceiling. The air was completely still. "Hello?" I called out. "Anyone here?" A crash answered me, something heavy falling several aisles over. I ran toward the sound, turning a corner to find a toppled stack of smaller boxes. No one was there. Something moved in my peripheral vision. The dark-jacketed figure stood at the far end of the aisle, facing away from me. "Hey!" I shouted, anger temporarily overriding fear. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure began to turn, slowly, almost mechanically. I raised my phone to capture video evidence. The screen went black. So did the lights. In the sudden darkness, I heard footsteps approaching, an uneven, dragging gait. My body camera would still be recording, I told myself, trying to control my panicked breathing. A hand touched my shoulder from behind. I screamed, spinning around to find Trisha holding a flashlight. "Power surge," she said tersely. "Happens sometimes. What are you doing back here alone?" "I heard someone called for help on the radio." She frowned. "Radios are down with the power." The emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. There was no sign of the figure, no evidence of the fallen boxes. "Let's get back," she said. "They're doing a head count." I followed her, glancing back repeatedly at the empty aisle. "Trisha, do you ever see him? The man in the jacket?" She was silent for several steps. "We all see things on night shift," she finally answered. "The trick is learning what to ignore." "But what if? Some things are better left alone," she interrupted sharply. "Miguel didn't understand that. Don't make his mistake." When the power returned, I immediately checked my body camera. The footage showed me entering the storage area, calling out, then standing motionless for nearly 3 minutes, staring at nothing, before Trisha arrived with her flashlight. There was no figure. No fallen boxes. Nothing to explain what I'd experienced. My phone, however, told a different story. Though the video had failed, it had captured audio. Most was just the ambient sounds of the warehouse, but at exactly 3:17 a.m., a voice whispered, barely audible. "You're in my section now." That was my last night at Costco. I left my vest and radio on Dan's desk with a hastily written resignation letter. He called me a few days later, asking if I'd reconsider. When I refused, he sighed. "You should know," he said hesitantly. "We found something unusual in the security archives. Footage of you talking to someone in the storage area the other night. We can't identify them. They never faced the camera. But I thought you said you were alone until Trisha found you." I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. "Can you send me that footage?" "That's the thing," he replied. "When IT went to extract it, the file was corrupted. Just static." He paused. "Be careful, okay? Maybe stay away from the store for a while." I've taken his advice. I haven't been back to that Costco, haven't even driven past it. But sometimes, looking through my apartment window at night, I catch a glimpse of a dark figure standing across the street, face hidden, watching my building. And every few days, my phone captures photos I never took, empty aisles at night, security cameras, the back of my head as I walk down the street. I've changed my number twice. It doesn't matter. Because I'm starting to understand what Trisha meant. About places that feel alive. About being watched. Sometimes I wake at exactly 3:17 a.m., heart racing, convinced someone is standing at the foot of my bed. I never turn on the light to check. Some things are better left alone. But if you work night shift at a Costco, and you notice items move from where you left them, or catch glimpses of someone who shouldn't be there, someone in a dark jacket who never shows their face, do yourself a favor. Don't follow. Don't investigate. And whatever you do, don't acknowledge that you've noticed. Because once you do, you're in their section now. I never thought much about the cameras at Costco until I started working night shift. During the day, they blend into the background. But at night, when the warehouse stands empty except for a skeleton crew, you become acutely aware of being watched. It was my third week on overnight inventory when I first noticed the customer. At 2:34 a.m., I was logging pallets of bottled water when movement caught my eye. A woman pushing an empty cart down the center aisle. She wore a beige raincoat and moved with slow, deliberate steps. My first thought wasn't fear but confusion. The store had been closed for hours, the massive doors locked and alarmed. I radioed my supervisor. "Mark, there's a customer on the floor. Central aisle heading toward home goods." The radio crackled. "Impossible. Doors are secure." "Well, she's here. Middle-aged woman, beige coat. Want me to approach?" Mark sighed. "I'll check the cameras. Stay put." I watched as the woman methodically pushed her cart, pausing occasionally to examine shelves without touching anything. There was something mechanical about her movements, as if she were following a script. When she reached the end of the aisle, she turned right, toward electronics, and disappeared from view. 5 minutes later, Mark's voice broke the silence. "I don't see anyone on the cameras." "What?" "She just went toward electronics. I've got all feeds up. No one's there." A chill ran through me. I abandoned my scanner and walked quickly toward electronics. The department was dark, illuminated only by standby lights on display TVs. No sign of the woman or her cart. I checked each aisle systematically. Nothing. When I returned to my station, Mark was waiting, his face tense. "Security did a sweep. All external doors are locked, no alarms triggered." "Then how?" "You're not the first," he interrupted, lowering his voice. "Night crew sees things sometimes. Especially in your section." I felt that prickle at the base of my spine. "What do you mean, sees things?" Mark shrugged. "Long hours, weird lighting. Brain plays tricks. We call it the Costco creep. Don't worry about it." But I did worry. Because I knew what I'd seen. And because it happened again the next night. And the night after that. Always the same woman. Always the same beige coat. Always appearing suddenly in my peripheral vision, pushing an empty cart with that same mechanical precision. Always vanishing when I tried to approach or when I called someone else to verify. After the fifth occurrence, I reviewed the security footage myself. Mark reluctantly granted me access during my break. The footage showed empty aisles at every timestamp I'd recorded. In one, I could see myself staring at nothing, my head turning slowly as if tracking movement. But there was no woman. No cart. Just me, looking increasingly unhinged. "Told you," Mark said. "Costco creep. Happens to everyone eventually." But it wasn't happening to everyone. Just me. And just in my section. I began photographing my area at the beginning of each shift and checking it periodically for changes. 3 nights later, I found the first anomaly. A single can of tuna placed precisely in the center of an otherwise empty bottom shelf. It hadn't been there an hour earlier. When I picked it up, I discovered a folded receipt underneath. On the back, written in neat handwriting, "I've been waiting to speak with you." I showed Mark, who frowned. "Probably another night stalker messing with you. I'll talk to the team." But 2 nights later, it happened again. Different location, same meticulous placement. This time a small bottle of hand sanitizer with another receipt beneath. "Please acknowledge me next time." The 3rd night, a travel-sized tube of toothpaste. "I know you see me. The cameras don't, but you do." I stopped reporting these incidents. Mark already thought I was succumbing to sleep deprivation, and I couldn't afford to lose this job. The overnight differential was paying my mother's medical bills. Instead, I set up my own surveillance. I placed my phone on a high shelf, recording video of the aisle where most of the sightings occurred. For 3 nights, nothing unusual appeared. On the 4th, at exactly 2:34 a.m., the video showed the same woman in the beige coat pushing her empty cart into frame. My hands shook as I watched the footage during break. She moved exactly as I remembered, but now I could see her face clearly. Unremarkable. Middle-aged. Vacant expression. She stopped beside the vitamin display, looked directly at the camera, and smiled. Then she did something that made my blood run cold. She held up a small whiteboard on which she had written, "Hello, Daniel. I need your help." My name. My actual name, which I never wore on a badge because I worked backroom inventory. The video ended abruptly after that, though I'd set it to record for hours. When I checked my phone, the video file was only 7 minutes long, ending precisely at 2:41 a.m., the moment I'd felt a sudden chill and looked up, sensing I was being watched. I requested a transfer to day's shift. My manager said he'd try to accommodate me within 2 weeks. 3 nights later, a new night manager came on shift. Cynthia was a former corporate auditor with a reputation for efficiency. "We've had some inventory discrepancies," she announced. "Small items missing. Nothing major, but corporate tracks these patterns. Until further notice, we're implementing random bag checks and additional camera monitoring." Her eyes lingered on me a beat too long. After the meeting, she pulled me aside. "Daniel, right? I understand you've reported some unusual sightings." I tensed. "Just tired. Long hours. Interesting that the missing inventory reports align with your schedule." My stomach dropped. "You think I'm stealing?" "I think," she said carefully, "that you've been under a lot of stress. Financial stress, from what I understand. Your mother's medical situation." How did she know about that? I'd only mentioned it during my initial interview. "I don't appreciate the implication," I said. "No implication. Just an observation. I'll be reviewing all security footage personally from now on." That night, the woman in the beige coat appeared again, this time standing at the end of my aisle, her cart abandoned. She stared directly at me. And for the first time, she spoke. "They're watching you, Daniel," she said, her voice surprisingly normal. "But they're not seeing everything." I froze, scanner in hand. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" "I work here," she said, as if it were obvious. "Night inventory. Just like you." "No, you don't. I know everyone on night inventory." She smiled sadly. "Check the employee records from 2 years ago." Before I could respond, she walked away, not vanishing suddenly as before, but turning the corner normally. I followed immediately, but the next aisle was empty. During break, I accessed the employee directory. No one with her description currently worked at our location. I checked the archived records, scrolling back 2 years. And there she was. Janet Cleary. Her ID photos showed the same unremarkable face. According to her file, she'd worked night inventory for 7 years before being terminated for policy violations 2 years ago. I printed her information and checked the inventory discrepancy reports for the period before her termination. Small items had gone missing, similar to what was happening now. Janet had been accused of theft, though nothing was proven. As I left the break room, Cynthia was waiting. "Finding everything you need?" I forced a casual tone. Just checking my schedule for next week. Her eyes dropped to my pocket, where the folded paper created a visible outline. Remember, Daniel, the cameras see everything. Even in the break room. That night, I found another message scrawled on an inventory sheet I'd left at my station. She was the one. Check the vitamin section, back corner. Look inside the empty boxes. After my shift, I slipped back to the vitamin section. Several large boxes of protein powder occupied the highest shelf. One had been opened, a customer return, from the looks of the resealed tape. I reached up and tilted the box, feeling something shift inside. Not powder, but something solid. Inside, hidden beneath a thin layer of protein powder, was a small digital recorder. At home, I connected the recorder to my laptop. It contained a single audio file dated 2 years earlier. 2 voices, Janet's and a man's. "You can't keep skimming inventory," the man said. "Loss prevention is flagging the patterns." "Your side business was your idea," Janet replied. "I'm just following orders." "Lower your voice," he hissed. "No one can connect this to me. I'm night manager. If this comes back on anyone, it's you." "Is that a threat, Mark?" My blood ran cold. "Mark. My supervisor." "It's reality," his voice continued. "Who do you think they'll believe? Besides, the cameras don't show everything. I've made sure of that. There are blind spots. And the new cameras corporate is installing next month?" A pause. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it." The recording ended. Mark had been running some kind of scheme with Janet. She'd taken the fall. And now, somehow, she was trying to communicate with me. But that was impossible. Because when I'd looked deeper into her file, I'd found a news clipping. Janet Cleary had died in a single-car accident 2 months after being fired. The next night, I placed my phone strategically to record my workstation. Mark approached shortly after my shift began. "Any more ghost sightings?" "Nope," I lied. "Guess I just needed more sleep." "Good man. Cynthia wants to see you in the office at break time." At break time, I retrieved my phone before heading to the office. No unusual recordings. Cynthia was reviewing paperwork when I entered. On her desk lay the tuna can, the hand sanitizer, the toothpaste, and the digital recorder. "Found during a locker search," she said. "Want to explain?" My mouth went dry. "Those aren't mine." "No? Your fingerprints are all over them. Daniel, we know about your financial troubles." "I'm not stealing," I insisted. "I found these things in my section. Someone's been leaving them for me." "Like Janet Cleary?" she asked skeptically. I stared at her. "You know about Janet? The former employee who was caught stealing? Who later committed suicide?" "Yes, I've read the file." "Daniel, I think you need help. Professional help." "Check the recorder," I said. "There's a conversation on it. Mark and Janet, discussing some kind of inventory scheme." Cynthia connected it to her computer. "It's empty, Daniel. No files." That was impossible. I'd heard it myself. "Mark is setting me up," I said desperately. "Like he did with Janet." "Mark?" Cynthia looked confused. "Mark has only worked here for 6 months. He never knew Janet Cleary." My world tilted. "What?" "No, he's been here for years." She shook her head. "I think you should take some time off." As I left, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Cameras and blind spots. Not all recording. Check timestamps. J." I pulled up the video of Janet. It now showed only an empty aisle. She had been erased. But the metadata showed the video had been modified 1 minute ago, while I was sitting in Cynthia's office with my phone in my pocket. Someone had remote access to my device. I searched newspaper archives and found Janet's obituary. Then I searched for Mark's full name, Mark Reeves. When I expanded the search to 5 years back, I found a business journal about Costco's regional management with a photo. In the back row stood Mark, identified as Mark Reeves, Regional Loss Prevention Director. Not a night supervisor who'd been there 6 months. A regional director who'd been with the company for years. My phone buzzed again. Now you understand. Meeting tonight, 3 a.m. Employee entrance. Bring the recorder. J. At 2:45 a.m., I parked across from the employee entrance. At precisely 3 a.m., a figure in a beige coat emerged from around the corner. Janet. She gestured for me to follow. The door clicked open as I approached. Janet was already inside, walking briskly toward the administrative offices. In the main office, Janet turned to face me. Up close, she looked tired. Real. Alive. You're not dead, I said stupidly. No. But it was safer for everyone to think so. The obituary. Paid for by Mark himself. A warning to me. The accident was staged. My car was found wrecked. No body was ever recovered. She sat on the edge of a desk. I knew too much about his operation. He'd been running inventory schemes at stores across the region for years. Why contact me? Because he's setting you up like he did me. Making you look unstable so no one will believe you when he pins the thefts on you. She examined my phone before removing the battery. They're monitoring you through this. It's how they've been deleting evidence. Mark doesn't work alone. Cynthia's part of it too. They move from store to store, find vulnerable employees, and set them up to take the fall. She handed me a thumb drive. This has financial records showing deposits to Mark's offshore accounts that align with inventory losses. Take it to corporate security, not local management. As I took the drive, the office lights flared on. Mark stood in the doorway, Cynthia behind him. Well, he said softly. This is unexpected. Janet stood. It's over, Mark. Daniel has everything. Mark smiled. Daniel has nothing but the word of a disgraced former employee with apparent mental health issues. An employee who, I might add, is legally dead. Doubt crept in. What if he was right? Janet's face hardened. Play the security feed from last Tuesday. 2:34 a.m. Vitamin aisle. Mark showed the vitamin aisle. Empty. Check camera 16. Janet insisted. The one you don't control. Mark's expression flickered. Camera 16 was decommissioned months ago. No, it wasn't, Janet said. It was installed during the last corporate upgrade. It uploads directly to regional servers, bypassing local controls. It's how they catch internal theft rings like yours. Uncertainty crossed Mark's face. He exchanged a glance with Cynthia. Daniel, Janet said quietly. Run. I bolted past Cynthia, clutching the thumb drive, and sprinted toward the exit. Behind me, security alarms blared as Janet apparently triggered them deliberately. I drove straight to the regional corporate office and waited until morning. 3 weeks later, Mark and Cynthia were arrested on multiple charges of theft, fraud, and falsifying records. The investigation revealed they'd been running similar schemes at 6 different stores in the region. Janet was interviewed by corporate security but never charged. She disappeared again afterward. I transferred to day's shift at a different location. Sometimes at night, when I shop at the original Costco as a customer, I glimpse a woman in a beige coat pushing an empty cart down a distant aisle. She never looks my way. I still check my phone for signs of tampering. I still feel watched sometimes, though I know the cameras have all been replaced. And I never, ever work night shift. The first time I met Elijah, I thought the overnight supervisor was playing a joke on me. Nobody starts a new job at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, especially not at a Costco in suburban Ohio. Yet there he was, standing perfectly still beneath the fluorescent lights, his uniform crisp and unwrinkled, as though he just removed it from the packaging. Daniel's going to train you on inventory, my supervisor announced before walking away, leaving me alone with the new guy. Elijah didn't extend his hand or smile. He just stared, his gaze fixed slightly above my eyes, as if studying something on my forehead. First overnight? I asked, trying to break the tension. Yes, he replied, his voice soft but precise, each syllable articulated with unusual clarity. I've been looking forward to it. Working overnight inventory at Costco isn't something people typically look forward to. It's a job you take because you need the money. The hours destroy your social life, the fluorescent lighting gives you migraines, and the endless repetition makes minutes feel like hours. But Elijah spoke as if he'd been offered a corner office on Wall Street. As we walked to electronics, I noticed something odd about his gait, a slight hesitation before each step, as if he were calculating the precise distance. Later, I would recognize this as the first warning sign. Have you worked retail before? I asked. No, he replied. But I've studied it extensively. An unusual choice of words, but night shift attracts all kinds, students, insomniacs, people running from something. We learn not to ask too many questions. I demonstrated the inventory scanner. Elijah didn't take notes, but watched with unsettling intensity, his head occasionally tilting at odd angles as if trying to view the scanner from multiple perspectives simultaneously. Got it? I asked. Yes, he said. The system is inefficient, but I understand its parameters. We worked in silence for nearly an hour. Elijah was methodical but surprisingly quick. Occasionally, I'd glance over to find him staring at me again, that same fixed gaze just above my eye line. Each time I caught him, he would immediately return to scanning items, his movements becoming more mechanical. During our break, Elijah sat opposite me, not eating or drinking, just watching other employees with that same unblinking focus. You should eat something, I suggested. Nights are long. I ate before arriving, he replied. Tell me about the others. What do you want to know? Their patterns, relationships, vulnerabilities. I nearly choked on my coffee. Their what? Their work patterns, break schedules, areas of responsibility. Oh, I said, unsettled by my own misinterpretation. That's not really my business. He nodded once, precisely. I will learn. When break ended, I noticed Elijah had completed nearly twice the inventory I had, despite being new. You're catching on quick, I said. Yes, he agreed without pride or modesty. The system is simple once you identify its logic. As the night progressed, I grew increasingly uncomfortable around Elijah. It wasn't anything specific, it was the accumulation of small anomalies. He never blinked. He would freeze mid-motion as if processing information. There was always a slight delay between a question and his response, as if he were selecting from predetermined answers. As we clocked out, Elijah turned to me. Thank you for your assistance tonight, Daniel, he said. I've learned a great deal. No problem, I replied, eager to leave. Yes, he said, his gaze once again fixed above my eyes. I will be watching for you. That night, I arrived at work to find Elijah already there, standing in exactly the same spot where I'd first met him, wearing what appeared to be the identical outfit. Hello, Daniel, he said. I observed 17 inventory discrepancies yesterday in electronics. I've documented them for correction. No greeting, no small talk, just straight to business. Over the next 2 weeks, Elijah became a constant, unsettling presence. He never called in sick, never arrived late, never seemed tired. While the rest of us shuffled through early morning hours in a caffeine-fueled haze, Elijah maintained the same eerily alert demeanor from clock in to clock out. He never joined us for breaks after that first night. Instead, he would disappear into the store's back areas, claiming to be optimizing his understanding of the facility layout. When questioned about his life outside work, he would provide vague, rehearsed-sounding answers before redirecting the conversation to workplace efficiency. Despite his oddities, management loved him. His productivity metrics were consistently double those of other employees. His inventory counts were never off. He volunteered for additional shifts and the most tedious tasks without complaint. Coworkers developed theories about Elijah. Some thought he was on the spectrum, others suggested he was ex-military. A few joked that he was a robot sent to make us all look bad. I didn't have a theory, I just knew he made me profoundly uncomfortable. Then came the night I discovered his notebook. Elijah had left his backpack unattended, something entirely out of character for him. Curiosity got the better of me. Inside the outer pocket was a small, black notebook with no markings. I should have closed the bag and walked away. Instead, I opened the notebook to a random page. What I saw made my blood run cold. The page contained a detailed diagram of our store's camera system, including blind spots marked in red. Below were notes about security sweep timings and the rotation patterns of managers. I flipped to another page. This one contained a list of employee names, including mine. Beside each name were deeply personal notes that no one at work should have known. Next to my name was a single word: compromised. I heard footsteps and hastily shoved the notebook back into the bag, zipping it just as Elijah rounded the corner. "Were you accessing my personal property, Daniel?" he asked, his voice unchanged but somehow more menacing. "No," I lied. "Just waiting for you to get back." He stared at me for several seconds longer than was comfortable, then nodded once. "Very well." For the remainder of the shift, I felt his eyes on me constantly. When our shifts ended, I practically ran to my car. The next night, Elijah didn't acknowledge our interaction. He worked with the same efficiency, maintained the same uncomfortable conversational patterns. But something had shifted. He was watching me more openly now, not bothering to look away when I caught him staring. During break, I pulled our supervisor aside. "Hey Mark, has Elijah's background check cleared?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh yeah, all that was fine." "Why?" I hesitated. "He just seems, I don't know, off somehow. Really intense." Mark laughed. "The guy's a productivity machine. Corporate's already talking about fast-tracking him to management. Whatever his deal is, it's working." I decided not to mention the notebook. Without evidence, it was just my word against his, and management clearly valued his performance. Over the next week, I noticed small changes in store operations. Camera angles were adjusted slightly. Security patrol schedules shifted. 3 long-term employees were suddenly terminated for inventory discrepancies, all of them people whose names had been in Elijah's notebook. One night, I arrived to find a new employee in electronics. Her name was Jessica, hired for overnight inventory. "Where's Elijah?" I asked our supervisor when I got the chance. "Transferred to management training," Mark replied. "Regional director fast-tracked him personally." A chill ran through me. "After just 3 weeks?" Mark shrugged. "Guy's a natural." That night, helping Jessica, I felt watched despite Elijah's absence. Twice, I caught glimpses of him at the end of distant aisles, but when I looked directly, he was gone. During break, Jessica leaned across the table. "Can I ask you something weird?" I nodded. "That manager, Elijah? He interviewed me, and he knew things about me I never told anyone at Costco. Personal things, like about my student loans and my roommate situation." She lowered her voice. "And he never blinks. Have you noticed that?" "He never blinks." My stomach tightened. How detailed was the information he knew? He knew my previous addresses, plural, and the names of my references before I provided them. It was like he'd been investigating me. I advised her to be careful about what information she shared at work. After work, I looked up Elijah online, hoping to find some social media presence that might explain his oddities. What I found instead was nothing. No LinkedIn profile, no Facebook or Instagram accounts, no public records matching his name and approximate age. According to the internet, Elijah didn't exist. The next day, I searched more thoroughly at the public library. I tried variations of his name, reverse image searches using a photo I'd taken during a shift. Still nothing. That night, Jessica was nowhere to be seen. "Where's the new girl?" I asked another stalker. "Didn't show. Mark said she quit without notice." My unease deepened. Jessica had seemed enthusiastic about the job, mentioning how much she needed the income. It didn't make sense that she would quit without explanation. I tried texting her. The message failed to deliver. When I called, a computerized voice informed me the number was no longer in service. After my shift, I drove by her apartment. As I approached, I noticed Elijah standing near the building entrance, wearing a nondescript dark suit. He was speaking to a man I didn't recognize, who nodded repeatedly while Elijah maintained his characteristic stillness. After a brief conversation, both men entered the building. I waited in my car for nearly an hour, but neither emerged. The next night, I was summoned to the manager's office. Inside, I found Mark with an unfamiliar woman in a corporate blazer. Elijah stood in the corner, watching. "Daniel," Mark began. "This is Rebecca from Regional Loss Prevention. She needs to ask you some questions." Rebecca smiled thinly. "We've been investigating some inventory discrepancies, and your name has come up." My heart raced. "That's impossible. My counts are always accurate." "Not according to our records," she replied, sliding a folder across the desk showing significant discrepancies during my shifts. "These are falsified," I said, looking directly at Elijah. "I never reported these numbers." Rebecca followed my gaze. "Elijah has been instrumental in identifying the pattern. His new inventory tracking system is what brought these issues to light." Elijah stepped forward. "Daniel has been exhibiting concerning behaviors. Unauthorized access to secure areas, unusual interest in security protocols, attempting to access other employees' personal information." His voice remained flat. "I believe he has been systematically removing high-value items." "That's ridiculous," I protested. "You're the one with the notebook full of—" I stopped, realizing how it would sound. "Notebook?" Rebecca prompted. "He keeps detailed notes on employees, security blind spots, patrol schedules." "I saw it." Elijah produced a black notebook and handed it to her. "My productivity journal. I document inefficiencies and areas for improvement." She flipped through it, showing me pages of innocuous notes about workflow processes. Nothing like what I had seen. "This is not the same notebook," I insisted. Mark turned his computer monitor toward me. The screen showed security footage of me placing several items into my backpack when no one was looking. "That never happened," I said, my mouth dry. "That footage has been altered. Our security system doesn't allow for editing," Rebecca said. "The timestamps are encrypted." "Then someone hacked it," I insisted. "This is a setup." Rebecca closed the folder. "We're not pressing charges, but your employment is terminated effective immediately." Two security guards appeared in the doorway. I looked between them, Mark, Rebecca, and finally Elijah, who watched me with that same unblinking stare. "You won't get away with this," I told him. For the first time, Elijah smiled. It was slight, but it transformed his face into something predatory. "You've been compromised, Daniel," he said softly. "It's already done." After being escorted out, I discovered just how thoroughly I'd been compromised. My bank reported suspicious activities. My landlord received complaints about noise from my apartment during hours I wasn't even home. My social media accounts were flagged for content I never created. Jessica had moved out suddenly. No forwarding address. I filed police reports about identity theft and harassment, but was met with skepticism, especially when officers learned I'd recently been fired for theft. 3 weeks after my termination, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single page torn from a notebook. On it was a list of names. Mine had been crossed out. Below it were 2 words. Phase 1. Jessica's name was on the list. So were Mark's and several other Costco employees. At the bottom, a final note. Regional expansion proceeding as scheduled. I don't know who or what Elijah really is. I don't know what Phase 1 means. I only know that something methodical and malevolent has taken root in that suburban Costco, spreading through management. Last week, I drove past the store and saw 3 black sedans with tinted windows in the employee section. Through the windows, I could see Elijah leading a group tour of men and women in business attire, all moving with that same mechanical precision. I've packed what I can into my car. I'm leaving Ohio tonight. But before I go, I needed to document this. When you notice new employees at your local Costco, people who stand too still, who speak too precisely, who seem to know too much, remember this account. And understand that by then, it might already be too late. Whatever Elijah is, whoever he works for, they're expanding. Phase by phase, store by store. And no one is watching except me. I'd been working night shift at Costco for 8 months when the special shipments started arriving. Every Tuesday, just after midnight, unmarked white refrigerated trucks would pull up to the loading dock. No company logo, no DOT numbers, just pristine white vehicles that hummed unnaturally quiet. The first time I saw one, I thought nothing of it. Retail logistics are chaotic. Vendors ship how and when they can. But I noticed something odd. Our night manager, Vince, always handled these deliveries personally, asking all regular staff to take their breaks when the trucks arrived. That might have been the end of it, if I hadn't accidentally witnessed the unloading one night. I'd forgotten my phone in the break room and doubled back through receiving. That's when I saw them, large white coolers, maybe 3 feet tall, being carefully unloaded by men in plain clothes rather than typical vendor uniforms. Each cooler had a digital display and what looked like a biometric lock. Vince was checking them against a clipboard, his normally casual demeanor replaced by intense focus. When he spotted me, his expression changed instantly. Not angry exactly. Frightened. "Jesus, Mira, you startled me," he said, forcing a smile. "Break's not over yet." "Forgot my phone," I explained, holding it up as evidence. He nodded stiffly. "Well, head back. We've got a full reset in home goods tonight." As I turned to leave, I noticed the manifest on his clipboard had a simple header: perishable medical supplies. Costco doesn't typically handle medical supplies, especially not temperature-controlled ones. We're a warehouse club, not a medical distributor. But I kept my observations to myself. The next day, I casually asked Kyle, another night stalker, "Ever see those white trucks that come on Tuesdays?" He shrugged. "Corporate has all kinds of vendors." "Why?" "Just curious. They're unlabeled, seems weird." Kyle lowered his voice. "Vince says it's some new pilot program. High-end stuff they're testing in select markets." He hesitated. "But between us, the way he acts when those trucks show up? Like he's terrified of something going wrong? I stay clear." For the next 3 weeks, I observed the pattern. Every Tuesday, 12:17 a.m. White trucks. Unmarked coolers. Vince personally supervising. And most tellingly, no record of the deliveries in our standard inventory system. I might have left it alone if not for what happened to Diane. Diane was our newest hire, a college student working nights to pay tuition. Smart, observant, and unfortunately curious. One Tuesday in April, she mentioned seeing the trucks and asked me directly, "What's in those fancy coolers they bring in the back?" "Medical supplies, apparently," I said. "Vince handles it." She frowned. "Weird. My roommate works at a medical supply company. They have strict labeling protocols, lot numbers, contents, hazard warnings. These have nothing." The following week, Diane wasn't on the schedule. When I asked about her, Vince said she'd quit without notice. It happened sometimes with night shift. People underestimated the physical and social toll of working while the world slept. But Diane had just bought a new car. She talked about her 5-year plan at Costco, working up to management. Quitting without notice didn't fit. I tried contacting her. Texts went unanswered, social media accounts deactivated. I even drove by her apartment. A "for rent" sign hung in the window, as if she'd simply vanished. That's when I decided to investigate more actively. The coolers were always moved to a newly constructed storage room behind the pharmacy area. The room had been added during recent renovations, ostensibly a medication overflow space, but it required keycard access that only Vince and the pharmacy manager possessed. I couldn't access the room, but I could track patterns. The coolers arrived every Tuesday. On Wednesdays, a different group arrived, men and women in business casual attire, carrying high-end briefcases. They'd meet with Vince and the pharmacy manager for approximately 22 minutes, then leave with smaller versions of the same coolers. In early May, I noticed a disturbing detail. The small coolers they carried out had different displays than the incoming ones, not just temperature readings, but what looked like countdown timers. The timers all showed between 8 to 12 hours. Whatever was inside had a very limited viable lifespan once removed from storage. The correlation with Diane's disappearance might have been coincidental, except for what happened next. I was restocking the employee refrigerator when I found a notebook wedged behind the ice maker, Diane's distinctive purple planner. Inside, among class schedules and work notes, were observations about the white trucks, nearly identical to mine. But she'd gone further, noting, "Followed PM on break. Observed her entering diagnostic codes on cooler keypads. Sequence starts with 371. The last entry, dated the day before she disappeared, chilled me. Asked my roommate about medical supply protocols. She says unmarked coolers violate every regulation unless they're for organ transport. Going to check pharmacy computer tonight." I kept the notebook hidden in my locker and bided my time. 2 more employees quit over the next month, both after asking questions about the Tuesday deliveries. The pattern was unmistakable. When the opportunity came, it was almost too perfect. A power outage hit our area around 1 a.m. on a Tuesday. The store's backup generators kicked in, but the automated systems needed manual resets, creating chaos. In the confusion, I slipped behind the pharmacy counter. The restricted room's card reader was offline, the magnetic lock defaulting to open during power loss, a fire safety feature. Inside, industrial refrigeration units hummed on emergency power. And there they were, 12 white coolers neatly arranged. Each had a digital display showing temperature, 2.1 degrees Celsius, and a series of codes. No identifying markings, no shipping labels. Nothing to indicate contents. I approached one, heart pounding. The biometric lock was a simple thumbprint scanner. But next to it was a keypad, the one Diane had referenced. I carefully entered 371. The display flashed red. Incomplete sequence. I tried to think like Diane. What would she have tried? She mentioned the pharmacy manager entering codes. The pharmacy's security code ended with 5 to 9 for the opening time. I tried 3-7-1-5-9. The cooler beeped softly, and the latch released with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, nested in precise molded foam, was a single human liver. Not a medical model or replica. An actual human liver, perfectly preserved, connected to a miniature perfusion device keeping the tissue viable. A paper tag attached to the apparatus listed blood type, HLA markers, and a 6-digit identification number. No donor name. No transplant center identification. None of the strict documentation legally required for organ transport. I carefully closed the lid, ensuring it resealed properly. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone trying to take photos of the cooler, the keypad, the room layout. As I turned to leave, the door opened. Vince stood there, silhouetted against the emergency lighting of the pharmacy. Behind him was a man I'd never seen before, expensive suit, surgical mask, latex gloves already on his hands. "Mira," Vince said quietly, "you shouldn't be in here. I got lost during the power reset." I lied, phone hidden in my pocket. The door was open. "Did you open any of the containers?" the suited man asked, his voice clinical and detached. "No," I said automatically. "I just came in to see if anyone was here who needed help with the system's reboot." Vince's expression told me he knew I was lying. He'd been a retail manager for 20 years. He could spot theft, deception, and rule breaking from across a warehouse. "The thing is, Mira," he said, stepping inside and letting the door close behind them, "we have sensors on the containers. We know exactly which one was opened, and when." The suited man moved to a wall panel, typed a code, and the room's independent security system reactivated, a camera in the corner blinking to life, The door lock re-engaging with a definitive click. We've had issues with employee curiosity before, the man said. Your colleague Diane, for instance. A cold wave of terror washed over me. Where is she? Vince looked genuinely sad. You need to understand the complexity of this situation. What we're doing here serves a greater purpose. You're trafficking human organs, I said, the reality of it striking me fully. Outside the transplant network. Illegal, unregistered organs. Misappropriating. The man corrected, as if the terminology mattered. The official transplant system is hopelessly inefficient. Perfectly viable organs wasted on bureaucracy while people die waiting. We've developed a more efficient allocation system. For people who can pay. I guessed. He didn't deny it. Our clients provide generous research funding that benefits everyone. The greater good sometimes requires operational flexibility. I became acutely aware of the photos on my phone, the only evidence of what I'd discovered. The suited man must have noticed my hand instinctively moving toward my pocket. Your phone, he said, extending his gloved hand. Please. Check the refrigeration seals. Vince told him suddenly. I think Unit 3 is showing temperature fluctuation. When the man turned to look at the displays, Vince's eyes met mine, and he mouthed a single word. Run. In that moment I understood. Vince wasn't a willing participant. He was trapped in something that had spiraled beyond his control. I bolted for the door, slamming my body against the push bar. The emergency exit feature engaged, alarms blaring as I sprinted through the darkened store. Behind me, I heard shouting and the sound of pursuit. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, hands fumbling with the keys. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I saw the suited man emerge from the store, talking urgently into a phone. I drove straight to the police station, where I sat in the parking lot for nearly an hour, trying to organize my thoughts. How could I explain what I'd found? Would they believe me? Or would they see a sleep-deprived night shift worker with an implausible story and grainy photos? As dawn broke, I made my decision. I uploaded the photos to a secure cloud account and emailed copies to myself through various services. Then I walked into the station. The detective who took my statement was professionally skeptical but thorough. When I showed him the photos and Diane's notebook, something changed in his demeanor. He made a call, spoke in low tones, then returned. We're going to need you to come back with a formal statement, he said. In the meantime, I'd recommend staying with a friend or family member, somewhere not listed in your employee records. That was 3 weeks ago. The investigation is ongoing, they tell me. Costco's corporate security is cooperating fully, appearing as shocked as anyone. Vince has been placed on administrative leave. The special storage room has been emptied, all traces of the coolers gone. I'm staying at my sister's place in another state. I've been told not to return to work until further notice. Every unexpected noise makes me jump. Yesterday, a detective called with an update. They've identified 3 transplant recipients with organs that have no donor record in the national system. They're building a case. But they still haven't found Diane. And last night, I saw a white unmarked truck parked across from my sister's apartment complex. It was gone this morning, and I can't prove it was the same kind. But I know what I saw. I don't sleep much anymore. Instead, I've been researching transplant tourism and black market organ trafficking. The global networks behind such operations are vast and well connected. They don't simply give up when one distribution node is compromised. Sometimes I wonder if I should have just kept my head down, pretended I never saw anything. But then I think about Diane's empty apartment. About the elegant men and women carrying those small coolers with their countdown timers, rushing to deliver their precious cargo. I think about what might have happened to me in that storage room if Vince hadn't created a distraction. The hardest part isn't the fear or the disruption to my life. It's knowing that every Costco I drive past might have a similar operation hidden behind its mundane exterior. It's wondering how many other retail chains might have similar arrangements with similar people. It's realizing that behind the everyday commerce of our lives, the bulk purchases, the free samples, the fluorescent lit normalcy, There can exist parallel economies trading in far more precious commodities. I check my locks 3 times before trying to sleep now. And I'll never work night shift again. Thanks so much for watching. I can't express enough how much your support means. The likes, the comments, it all really helps the channel grow. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I always take the time to read them. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on any new videos. See you next time.